Here, we can go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to our first Women's Advisory Institute event of the year. Today we're celebrating Earth Day. My name is Kate Pettee and I will be our host for this live virtual event. I'm a wealth advisor in Beacon Pointe's Philadelphia office, and I specialize in helping clients to align their values with their investments. So today we're going to spend about 10 minutes learning a little bit more about values-based investing and how Beacon Pointe clients can make an impact with their investments. And then we're going to jump across the country to Donna Minch, and Donna is going to teach us how to bring some of Earth's beauty into our homes. And if any of you have ever watched a floral demonstration before, it's a lot of fun, and Donna has some really great tips for us. So feel free to sit back and relax. And just so you know, your cameras and your microphones are disabled, so don't worry. But we would really love for you to participate through the Q&A section of the Zoom. So feel free to type a question in through the Q&A box, and I will be monitoring that throughout the duration of our live event here. So I see we have some first-time listeners on our call today. So on behalf of the entire Women's Advisory Institute, I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us. Just a little about Beacon Pointe before we jump in. As many of you know, Beacon Pointe is a national registered investment advisory firm. We're headquartered in beautiful Newport Beach, California. And we have approximately $15 billion in assets under advisement for institutions and for private clients. And we've worked over the last 20 years to develop a client experience that we affectionately refer to as our all wealth experience. And many of you are probably familiar with it. But it's all about helping clients to align their life and their wealth. And we do that through three core areas of focus. The first is the access that we provide to institutional quality investments. Our research team is led by our Chief Investment Officer, Michael Dow, who, by the way, has a really great markets podcast. If you are looking for something sort of quick and educational, it's about 15 minutes on the current state of the economy. It's called Markets in Motion, so feel free to check that out. The second pillar is Beacon Pointe's life and legacy planning. And the third, and of course why we are all here today, is Beacon Pointe's unique impact initiatives, which includes values-based investing and the Women's Advisory Institute. So what is values-based investing? Well, it's all about investing consciously and purposefully to make an impact. And there are many underlying approaches to values-based investing, though common values that I see when I speak to clients typically fall into one of the categories in ESG. And many of you are probably familiar with ESG. It stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it's a framework that helps us to first identify what our values are, and then to align our values to our investments. So when we are analyzing data, right, or prospective companies to invest in, we typically do it in the context of ESG. And this type of investing, values-based investing, has experienced exponential growth over the last decade. And that's actually driven a lot by investor demand, and notably the transfer of wealth, both across generations and across genders. A recent study showed that up to 80% of millennials and women want to invest to make a positive change. And that's actually a pretty significant attitude shift from previous generations who, kind of viewed their investments as separate from their charitable goals or charitable interests. So I'll just take a step back for a minute here and take you through a quick evolution of this type of investing. So, the concept of aligning your values with your investments is not particularly new. This has been around for, 70 plus years. And it began with religious institutions, actually, and their desire to exclude or screen out certain industries. They were called sin stocks. So think, tobacco, weapons, gambling, those types of things. And then we started to see pockets of ESG emerging in the 70s and 80s, but again, it was still very much an environment of excluding certain industries, excluding certain countries, and sometimes that was to the detriment to the portfolio's actual performance. So what we've seen is a little bit of a shift over the last 20 years. So what we're able to do now, with better technology and better data, is to really look for companies that are actively doing good, regardless of the industry they operate in. So, take, for example, an oil company that has exceptional gender and racial representation, or that's looking to adapt some more sustainable practices. Something like that might pass an inclusionary screen, whereas before something like that, because of the industry it was in, would be totally removed. But, big picture, what we're seeing now is better data, better company disclosures relating to ESG factors and risks, and there are much more investment options and a lot more customization. So one of the things that you need to think about if you want to get into values-based investing, is what are the issues that you care about the most? Here at Beacon Pointe, we recognize that every client is different and has different values. So we want to get to the core of, what drives you. And that's a key starting point in at least our process. So once you understand which values are most important to you, here at Beacon Pointe, we can help provide a level of transparency. So for example, if you came to me and said, Kate, I care about sustainable agriculture and climate change, I can show you, what percentage of your portfolio actually conflicts with that stated value. And we can work together to help come up with a plan to either divest, meaning take our investments out of, or we can think of ways to supplement your portfolios with companies that do support your values. We also like to have very tangible metrics so that you can see the actual impact and the contribution you're making to your values. And Beacon Pointe's been doing values-based investing since our firm's inception in the early 2000s. In fact, our CEO, Shannon Yusi, managed values-based portfolios prior to even founding Beacon Pointe. Okay, so before I turn it over to our main event with Donna Minch, I just want to talk through a quick case study on 2020, which was really a momentous year for our environment, for our society, and for governance issues around the world. First and foremost, the pandemic had a significant impact on all of us. I mean, we're still doing virtual events. But it had a very immediate impact on female participation in the workforce, which is actually at its lowest level since 1988. And further, about 1 in 4 women who did leave the workforce are considering either, not returning or returning in less capacity. And that's compared to a smaller percentage of men who said the same. Switching gears a little bit to climate change. Globally, 2020 was the hottest year on record. And here in the US, we faced a record-breaking number of climate-related disasters costing over $100 billion. And then 2020 also saw a resurgence of conversations and activism around social justice and equality. And this brings us back to our goal of, how do we as women and we as women investors facilitate change with our resources? And there are great ways to do that with a values-based approach to investing. The first step, though, is to figure out what matters to you. As you can tell, this is something that I am personally very passionate about, and anyone at Beacon Pointe would be equally as excited to speak with you about values-based investing. Okay, so I'd like to take a moment now to introduce our wonderful guest and our main event with Donna Minch. Donna is a retired professor of horticulture, and she has lived all over the US and abroad, and she consults on floral work nationwide and across the globe. She's earned a certificate in professional design and shop management from Rittner's School of Floral Design in Boston, and she attended Utah State University to study plant science. Later in her career, she was even asked to build out a program for Utah State students where they can earn a degree in horticulture. Donna, we're so thrilled to have you today. Just a note to our audience, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section, and I will be monitoring that for the duration of the event. But Donna, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you, Katie. And I appreciate the invitation to speak to the women here. And Katie, that was an excellent presentation on value-based investing. I'll have to talk to our investment people about that. So today it's Earth Day, so happy Earth Day. And I wanted to show you what you could do with flowers from the grocery store, from Trader Joe's, and from Costco. So we're going to start out with one of my favorite flowers to buy at my local grocery store, and they are called Charmelia, and it is a type of an Austromeria lily. Now, when I'm going to prepare these, I'm going to pull off all of the leaves that are showing any type of damage. So I'll go through the whole bunch and I will strip the leaves that are down here and then any up here that have damage to them. Now, when you're purchasing flowers, you want to look for the flowers to be in bud. That way they will last much longer for you, because as they open, they're starting to die. So the more they can be in bud, the better. So I've prepared the flowers, okay? And now the one thing about making an arrangement is you go to put the flowers in and they don't stay put where you want them to stay. So the key to having them stay put is using greenery. Now, when you buy a bunch of flowers at the grocery store, they don't give you any greenery, not usually. And so you have to come up with some greenery. So I like the idea of incorporating in greenery that you can find, scavenge, trim in your local area. And I know we have people all over the country. So if you are in Southern California, you have an abundance of things that are green all year. If you are in Boston or in Utah, you don't have that much that's green all year. So kind of watch your neighbor areas, your own yard. If you live in an area that has citrus, you can prune citrus. Many of the sages, I'm going to use boxwood today. This is an English ivy that I'm using just to build a base. So I'm starting with a tall vase because your flowers will last longer if you can, every 5 days, change the water and recut the stems. So if you make them really short to start with, you don't have much stem that you can cut off. And I also use the floral preservative packets that usually are with the flowers. You probably only need about half of what's in the packet. So take the other half and just tape it off and throw it in your kitchen drawer. So if the next time you buy flowers, they don't have them. Now, to figure how tall something should be, I line it up against my vase. And then you can actually bring it to the edge of your counter and then cut it. Now, I don't have to cut these much because I'm using a tall vase. So I'm going to slip it in between the greenery that I have in here, and hopefully it stays where I put it. Now, if I were just to put this in this vase with no greenery, it's not gonna behave. It's not gonna do what I want it to do. So then I will judge my second flower. I'm bringing it right down to my countertop and I'm gonna cut it.
And Donna, do you like those to be the same height, or do you sort of vary the height of?
I'm going to vary the height a little bit in this. And this is going to be just a very simple arrangement. I'll go to the other side, measure, cut. And this greenery is going to help me to keep it where I want it. So this bunch of flowers comes with 5 stems. And 5 stems, this vase opening is about a 3-inch opening. So depending on the size of the opening of your vase is going to depend on how many flowers it's going to take. If you have a vase that is really wide on the top, but narrow at the bottom, when you put the flowers in, they're all going to go this way. So if you want something that's a little more upright, then use something that either has a smaller top with a bigger bottom. So we have a little bit of greenery here to the side. I'm going to add a little color on the stem, on the vase. Look at it. So I have about 1.5 yards of ribbon. I'll pull it to the middle. And it's like tying a shoestring. So take the left side over and come up and pull it tight so it stays there. Now you're going to take the same side that you just came from, but now it's your right-hand side. Put it over the top and pull. And this ribbon has a little bit of wire in it, so I can that didn't take long, but the key is you have to go and find some extra greenery to put in it. Now, when these blossoms start to fade, go in with your scissors and just clip them off because they will keep blossoming up the stem. There, can you see the top now? So this is our Charmeleon. It is a type of a spray of Austromeria Lily. And yeah, that's that. So let me put this over here.
Is that in season, Donna?
You know, they come from Colombia. So as far as Earth Day goes and being locally sourced, we don't have a lot at this time of year in most places. But there are a lot of flower CSAs, community supported agriculture programs, that if you have them in your area, I work with a lot of my students who have become professional flower farmers, and that's where they sell their goods in the summertime. And some have hoop houses and things like that that they can be producing at other times of the year. So our next arrangement.
We have a just a question on, do you intentionally create in sort of a V shape, or do you just sort of place where you feel is natural?
More of a, yeah, I guess it is kind of a V when it comes up out of a vase. But I try to place them more in a semi-symmetrical placement when I'm using just one flower and all of one flower. So I hope that answers that question.
It does. And we had another just quick question, and then I'll let you get on to the next one. So why do you cut the stems at an angle?
I don't necessarily cut them at an angle. It just, sometimes they go at an angle and sometimes they don't. Technically, if you cut them at an angle, you are allowing more surface area for capillary action for the water to get up the stems. And the main reason why you want to change the water in the arrangement and recut the stems is, think of the stem like a drinking straw. And, you know, you get to the bottom of your beverage and there's stuff in the bottom and it doesn't go up the straw. And then the bottom of the straw gets kind of soggy, and so it doesn't absorb the water the way it should. So if you take this arrangement, like that, so if in 5 days, just pull it totally out, recut the stems about a ½ an inch or a little more if you see that they're getting kind of mushy. Some plants get mushier than others. And then just hold it together and put it all back in the vase.
I also noticed that you kept some of the greenery in the vase. Is that?
Yeah. And the greenery will break down, but this is not a soft greenery that's going to break down. The greenery that was on the Austromeria is softer, so I don't want that in the vase if I can help it. So now, in another few days, if I cut these off, they're still going to be tall. So they're going to start out tall with a purpose. You want them tall so that you can keep maintaining them, okay? So the next arrangement, my second favorite flower to buy in the grocery store is Austromeria Lilies. Now, these were a little more open than I would have liked, but this is what they have. So I'm going to take them out of the wrapper. Again, my little packet of floral food that I don't need because I've already done it from other ones. So I'll just set that aside. So can you see this greenery looks really good, so I'm not going to take it off, but I am going to take off the greenery that's below. Now this arrangement is going to be very short on the main one, but I do need some greenery in here to hold it in place. So this is boxwood, courtesy of my neighbor. I grow one in my backyard just for the purpose of cutting it. But there's lots of shrubbery, privet, viburnums. There's just a lot of greenery out there that you can cut and it will hold up. So this was off of my neighbor's boxwood. And I am stripping off some of the leaves that are going to be below the water line. So I want that a little shorter.
Donna, is there a rule of thumb to the ratio of the height of the flower to the height of the vase?
You know, they'll say 1.5 times the height of the vase, but now that we're using taller vases, 1.5 times the height would be extremely tall. So it's more the look you like. Do what you like. If you like the munchy look of everything down low in the vase, then do that. So now here I'm going to gauge it against the, excuse me, against the vase. Now this vase has about a 1-inch glass on the bottom. So I need to take that into consideration. And always cut with the idea that you can go back in and cut it shorter, but you can't go back in and make it taller. So keep that in mind. Excuse me.
That's what they say, right? They say measure twice, cut once.
Exactly. So I want these to all be approximately the same height. And with how full these are, I might be able to get away with only 3 in this vase.
Donna, are you using a special set of scissors there, or is that just...
I am. Oh, excuse me. And I don't want to sound like a salesman for this company, but my friend, who is also a florist, bought me these scissors, and they're called Klaus, and it's C-L-A-U-S-S. And I have a hard time finding them when I do want them, but I did find them last night, and it's klausco.com. If you Google them, and they'll say Amazon has them, but they're an 8-inch. They're an 8-inch shear with the handle. I use them everywhere. I use them in the garden. I use them for flowers. They get hammered, but they're just nice and sharp. I've sent them to many people that are friends that do flowers, because I'll go to their house and try to do, excuse me. And they don't have a decent pair of scissors to cut the flowers with. Okay, so there's 4 stems in there. It's nice and full. We don't need to add more, because we could do a little companion piece to go with it, with a taller square vase. Put some greenery in. I see Amber's, my neighbor's boxwood has a little bit of iron chlorosis, but that's okay. Beggars can't be choosers. And this one, I'll want it a little taller. And I'll put a little more greenery in to hold it, because I have a second vase to go with this one.
Do you ever use any wire or lattice to keep it, flat, to keep it from sort of tumbling over, or you just use the greenery and that kind of holds it in place?
I'm using just greenery now, but sometimes when we're doing really big openings like this, there's actually a cellophane tape that's only about 1/8 of an inch wide, and we'll make a grid to go across to help hold it. Now, if you're doing that at home, it makes it really difficult to pull the flowers out to be able to change the water. And so in that case, what you do, if you had something that was like that, is I would just take a big vase and put it in the sink and use my hose thing from the sink and put it in there and flush the water out to change the water. I was doing a wedding one time, and I was using a flower that is dyed through the capillary action. Well, the problem was, once it gets in water, some of that dye started flushing out, and so the water kept turning pink. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. And so I would flush it, and then the next thing I knew, it was pink again. And then the bride came by and she says, oh, I love how you made the water pink. I was like, okay, good. So here we've got a little, you can make a little grouping, or you can have them just separate on a table. So this is Austromeria. Now I can add a little to this Austromeria and give it a different look. So this is more of a clean look. So what I have now, move this so you can see it. So this is wax flower, and I got this at Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is a great place for flowers if it's nearby. They They just have a great selection. And this comes out of Australia normally. So again, we don't grow it here for some reason. So if I take some of this wax flower and add it, it's going to change the look. And so now it's not going to be quite so munchy. It's going to have a little more fullness to it.
And Donna, how long would an arrangement like that last if you're doing the every 5 days, clearing it out?
I would say these Austromeria are a little more open than I normally buy them, but I would say this will last 10 days. The Charmelia will probably last a little more than that, but I've had Austromeria Lily last for almost 3 weeks if I get them nice and tight. So adding a little bit of this wax flower to it totally changes the look. But there's nothing wrong with just having the Austromeria in there on its own. And then if you really want to change up the look, you could add this is curly willow that I've stripped the leaves. Add a little curly willow in for height. And now you've totally changed the look of the arrangement. That curly willow does not want to cooperate. It's twisted all on its own. Okay, that one's not going to stay.
So when you're designing a bouquet, you know, maybe more from scratch for a wedding or something, do you usually start with colors, or do you start with like a certain number of greenery, or how do you approach, you know, a wedding?
Color normally is the factor in a wedding, and brides will decide that they like a color, but it's not necessarily that flower that they love. So it's usually color that kind of is the determining factor, because I'll say to them, well, do you really like that specific type, that flower? And it comes down to, no, I really just like that shape or that color. And so, and then you do have weddings that are driven by color totally, and you want to say there is not a flower in nature of that specific color. So it doesn't work that way. Okay, so this could be our little grouping. Let me get this back a little further so you can see it. Our curly willow's not cooperating like I want it to.
We have another question on the longevity. Are there certain flowers that you would recommend that last longer than others?
Yes, for sure. So the Austromeria lilies are very long-lived. Anything in the chrysanthemum family are long-lived. They will last quite a long time. Carnations last well. The miniature carnations last very well. If you have roses, it's kind of a shot in the dark on how long roses will last, because once that rose head starts to tip, it's all over. It won't perk back up like other flowers do. So that's why a lot of florists will actually wire the rose heads in place just to help to keep them upright. So the next thing is Somebody has just come to your house, you're now entertaining again, and they brought you this bunch of flowers from Costco. And what do? So first off, you scurry to find a vase because you didn't know they were going to be bringing you flowers. So unwrap them and see what you have, and which is kind of hard if you're like having a dinner party, because you're trying to get dinner going and you're trying to get the hors d'oeuvres out, and now you have flowers to arrange. So you may want to just say thank you and plop them in some water and do this later, but if you need to try to do it now, take the flowers and let me tip the camera just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is kind of a general inventory. So I have no idea what's in this bunch. I'm making a little more room here. So I have salal or lemon leaf. I have 2 stems of stalk so far. Oh, there's a third one. I have status, which will last forever and will dry. I have a couple of carnations. Now on a carnation, if it's not open, you can gently coax it, kind of blow into it and just gently coax it, not too hard, just to get it open a little bit. And that will open up more once. There's some Austromeria. I'm gonna go ahead and strip those. There's some chrysanthemums that are a button style chrysanthemum. And these green ones are called kermits, like the frog. Now, there's a couple in here that are not looking very good and one that's broken. So I'm cutting those off. More salal. One thing about Costco, they do give you greenery, so that's nice. Another Austromeria. Okay, we have 2 Gerber Daisies. And this is a type of chrysanthemum as well. And sometimes these are, it's more of a cushion, but it's a little bigger than it's obviously bigger than the kermits.
That's kind of interesting, Donna. They just gave you one yellow flower.
Yeah,
It doesn't really go with the rest of the color palette.
No, it doesn't. But I guess you do with what they give you. So I'm going to start out. This is a Willow Eucalyptus. And I want to give a shout out to my daughter, who is a Beacon Pointe advisor in Scottsdale. If we hadn't been taking 2 days to drive home, I would have been cutting this kind of eucalyptus because it's everywhere in their area. And it's very popular because of this grayish green color. It's just a very popular greenery. So that's the eucalyptus. And then this is the salal. It's also called lemon leaf because it does look very similar to a citrus leaf in shape. So I'm going to start by putting the lemon leaf in first to create that foundation.
And how wide is the opening of that vase, and why did you choose that one?
So this vase is 3.5 inches. It looks wider, but at this point it's 3.5 inches. If I have too many flowers for this, then I can put them somewhere else. But if I don't have enough flowers, I'm going to have a hard time having it not just look like I just didn't do it with any kind of intention. Okay, so I have my lemon leaf in there. I'm going to add this. And can you see how this will kind of drape a little, which is pretty. And so I have this bigger piece. I'm going to cut it because I don't need it quite that long, but then I can use it in another place. And I'm going to do a fresh cut on the end. Everything that goes in has had a fresh cut. Okay, so here I have a base. Now I have to decide, what do I want to put in first? My stalk has a little more height to it. So I have things that have height. I have things that are more round. So I want to do a mix. I'm going to strip this part of the stem. Again, I'm going to hold it next to the vase. I don't want to make it too tall because I don't really have that many flowers. And I'm going to have this be in the center. So keep your fingers crossed once I get it in there that it kind of stays where it's going to be. Okay, good. I'm going to use my other stalk.
Do any of these, Donna, have a strong scent to them, or do you recommend any flowers that do?
That's a great question. Stalk smells like cloves, and it's more fragrant at night because of its adaptability for pollinators. So if you have stalk in an arrangement and you left in the morning and you come home in the afternoon and it's got so much fragrance and you're saying, well, it didn't smell when I left. It's because its adaptability for pollinators makes it more fragrant in the evening. And sometimes it's called evening stalk for that reason. So there we have, let me tilt the camera up a little higher again. There. Our wealth advisor daughter is in the background of that picture on the mantle. Now that I've blocked it.
That looks great so far.
Okay, so next I think I will use the Austromeria lily. And I have two, so I'm going to put one kind of on one side and one on the back side. And again, I'm going to bring it down. Okay, there's one.
It seems like the greenery really makes a difference in helping it to keep its shape.
Oh, definitely. It's your foundation. It's your, it's the T-bills in your portfolio. It's the stabilizing element, Not that we have any T-bills, but, Okay, so let's put in, I'm going to put in the Gerber Daisies. Now, I'm going to show you a trick if I have some floral tape in this drawer. I don't. Okay. Normally I have floral tape in the kitchen here. But Gerber Daisies, you wouldn't have to do this at home, but it would help it last longer if you have some floral wire and you just reinforce the stem. Sometimes these Gerber Daisies will come with what they call a daisy straw, and it's actually a plastic straw that goes up over the stem because they do tend to be top heavy. So I'm just going to put a wire on. Normally, if I was putting a wire, I would cover it with floral tape so that the wire's not noticeable. The tape is the color of the stem. Okay, so I've added that. Find my other one. And again, you can fluff it open a little bit, just gently fluff it open. Yeah, the other bunch of flowers at Costco had like these giant sunflowers in it. And they're just so hard to work with. So if you do love sunflowers and you want to get sunflowers for an arrangement, just put them in something that has a smaller vase opening and don't let them be too tall. And then you can work with them. Okay. Stay there, Guy.
We had a question on whether or not these flowers are pet friendly, or if there are certain brand types that are.
You know, I don't know if, I don't know. I don't want to say something that's not true. Lilies have some alkaloids in them, and so I don't think that would be good. I think about what grows in my yard and what the deer like to eat, and it's pretty much everything except the daffodils and the hyacinths. And so I would say kibbles and bits are better than flowers for animals. I mean, I know it's like poinsettias. You don't want anybody to ingest any kind of plant material like that, unless it's like nasturtiums. And if you grow nasturtiums, you can put those in salads, and they're very cute and very peppery tasting. Okay, I'm going to add these carnations will open up bigger later, and so I'm hoping they're going to fill a space later. So when I'm arranging, I'm going to keep turning the arrangement just to see, so I don't build it all from one side and then I notice I have a big hole on the other side. Okay, so now you mentioned the yellow. You know, where can I put this yellow that it's not going to stand out like a sore thumb? So turn your arrangement and see where you can have a yellow focal point accent and tuck it in there. Okay. Now I have my kermits. And if I was doing a smaller arrangement, can you see how long the stems are? That's called the break. And so if you're doing smaller arrangements, you want longer breaks so you can actually move those flowers. You can cut them off and use them in another part of your arrangement. Okay. Like this Austromeria has very small breaks, so I wouldn't be able to cut those off and use them as separate flowers. And then I have this status.
Do you typically like using a glass vase versus one that's more opaque?
The look now seems to be more of the glass look. It's a little harder sometimes doing the glass look. It's nice if you don't see all the stems sometimes. So it's kind of just what you have, what you like, as far as clear glass or not.
Yeah, I've noticed that if I'm not going to be changing the water as frequently as I should be, I like something a little where you can't really see the water.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'll go into businesses or something and they'll have, not recently, I haven't gone into a business since COVID, of course, but they'll have a vase arrangement somewhere and it's just like, you know, do you have a tadpole? Are you trying to grow frogs in there or what? You know, that's pretty nasty looking. Yeah. So here's our last piece. So I'm just turning to see where would be a good spot for this. And the other thing is when you're making an arrangement and you look at it and it looks pretty full, even if you have extra flowers, you don't have to put them in. You know, when you're done, be done. Okay, so there's our Costco bouquet. Okay.
That looks great, Donna. It looks much better from how the Costco person arranged it.
I know, I looked at some of the Costco stuff yesterday and I thought, oh, that needs a little help.
So we had a question, you know, since it is Earth Day, about what are some tips to do floral arranging in a, you know, more environmentally conscious way. I know a lot of the, you know, when you go to the grocery store, there's a lot of plastic, or so do you have some tips on how we can be a little more environmentally conscious?
You know, they have to wrap the flowers the way they do to cushion them, and so it's kind of hard to change that environmental impact. But I think you can be environmental, you can have an environmental impact in other ways. I mean, if you do compost, you can compost your flowers, but I had a gal in one of my floral design classes and she said, well, I compost. And so we said, great. And so we just would clean up after class and let her take everything home to compost. But yeah, there's not a lot. I don't think there's a lot we can change on that other than using containers that might be thrown away for something else. So this little container is actually a bottle that tonic comes in, tonic water comes in. I think it's called tea tree. And I use these little bottles for maybe a few stems of lily of the valley or something out of the garden. WAI yogurt comes in these glass containers. And you can just put a few flowers in there, just a few things cut from your yard or from leftovers from another arrangement. So now this is a bunch of tulips from Trader Joe's. 20 tulips for $10, basically. And I've got a vase that has an opening of 4.5 inches.
The tulips look so beautiful just on their own.
I know, they're
I'm
just
excited
so...
to see how this last arrangement worked out. And I'll just say to our audience, we have about 5 or so minutes left. So if you have any other last minute questions, feel free to ask.
So this is Trader Joe's packaging on the tulips. So they're not over packaging, I don't feel like. And it is a number 5 on recycling, but I don't think they do number 5s here. So this is the easiest thing to do. Now, once you put a tulip in a vase, it will continue to grow. So these tulips are taller than they were when I bought them yesterday. So I'm gonna gauge them against my vase. And then I'm gonna take the whole bunch and cut them. And this is where you have to have a pretty decent pair of shears so that you're not mashing the stems, you're actually cutting the stems. Now, if I put this out in the deer food dish tonight, they will come and eat these, I'm sure, and want more. And I'm going to put them in the vase, lower them down to the bottom, and then release them.
Donna, we have a great question on how to find fair trade flowers versus flowers that are grown more for mass production. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say local, buy local in the summer. Find people who are local flower growers. When I buy flowers at the wholesale flower place, they are marked whether they are fair trade producers. And a lot of the one wholesaler that I use, they choose fair trade producers over others. They go to the growers, they see the practices, but it's, you know, we're supporting industries in countries that need our support. So when flowers come out of Colombia, Ecuador, the South American companies, our purchasing of those flowers through, even though it's international, is still, it's a great impact. And a lot of women work at these flower farms. And so I feel like it's a way to support the women there. So this can't be any easier than this.
That looks great.
And
I had a question on how do you keep your tulips from flopping over? I've heard some old wives' tales about like putting bleach in the water or putting copper pennies in with tulips. What do you think?
Again, the tulips grow, and so they will start to come out, and they will open more in the day and close up more in the night. And so if the tulips are in an environment that is extremely warm all the time, then they're going to flop. This has the floral preservative in there, so that takes that takes away the need for a penny or Sprite. Or one place they swore by vodka. I think they just like to drink the vodka. We like to drink the Sprite. But this floral preservative will do that. And if you can keep your tulips in a cooler place when you're not home, then they'll last longer.
Awesome. Well, Donna, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really fun and informative and kind of relaxing, honestly, to watch you go through this. So I just want to thank all of our guests for joining us. And again, if you have questions about values-based investing, I know there were some questions we didn't get to today, so I will definitely reach out and Donna and I can try to answer some of our lingering questions. But thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
And happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Except your mother. Always.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.